Welcome. This is going to be a very brief, hopefully, tutorial on how to make custom charts for Trombone Champ using Trombone Charter. Trombone Charter is a very simple, easy to use DAW that's best for beginners and novices. But it lacks a good chunk of quality of life features such as copy and pasting and technically a zoom out feature, but if you are more experienced with other DAWs such as Ableton, FLStudio, I would recommend checking the modding wiki in the description for a much better tutorial. Otherwise, let's get started. Before we begin though, before we can open Trombone Charter, we will need a custom song folder for our custom song. As for that song we're making, we will be naming it, we will be charting actually, Megalovania 2. I know, pretty big, right? With that, we can open Charter. There we go. Charter opened up. Now, let's full screen this. Typically, when you open it for the first time, you will get this prompt. You can ignore that, or you can look at that later. But for now, here it is. This is Trombone Champ Charter. First off, let's set the metadata for the song file itself. This is the information that will be appearing in the game song selection when you're selecting a song. As such, we will be titling this Megalovania 2. Megalovania 2. Enter. 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 Genre. Official soundtrack. And description, let's just go with heh. That's a good description. Next, we'll be setting the year. This is typically what you would put for the year that the soundtrack or game released. And we have difficulty. Difficulty in the game is usually rated by stars in the vanilla game. There's no standard for actually setting a difficulty. It's mostly up to your discretion, but for now we'll leave it at 5. Note spacing, I'll get into a little bit once we have finished our chart. And time signature, most songs are typically at 4 time signature, but that'll be up to debate on what kind of song you're charting. But for now, let's get to charting. Actually, before that, we will want to save this before we get started on putting any notes on here. We will save this. And now, right now, if you have already downloaded Charter, I would recommend putting the files somewhere where you would also find your custom songs. As such, I put mine here at the top, so it's easier for me to navigate this really bad file navigating system, because it already starts me where my custom chart is. So now, let's look for Megalovania 2. Megalovania 2. Make sure this is Megalovania 2, and we will save this as a song.tmb file. A TMB file, right over here, is typically it's just a JSON file that the game can read. So we'll save that, and then we have saved the metadata. Now let's get into charting the song itself. Now if you try to click around here, you'll realize that you can't really place down any notes. That's because we only have one length beat here, and it's in this blue area. So we can only place our notes in this blue area. That's not really how you chart. So instead we'll set this to, let's say, 18. Not 118, 18. There we go. As such, we have this entire area to actually place notes on. Oh, and for placing notes, you can left click to place a note, right click to get rid of it. You can also middle click to get rid of it. If you click the end note, you can drag it around and move it up and down as a slide. But you actually want to hear those notes, right? Well, in order to do that, we will need to move this blue section over the notes that we want to play. You can do that by going into Editor Settings and going to the section Start and Length and put it over here. As you can see, it's set to 0 and 1. And in order to move that, you can either click and drag, or you can click the borders here and drag them yourself. So let's put a note here and try to play it. there you have it. And now, well, before we can actually chart anything, we would want a backing track so we can actually listen to the song we want to chart. Luckily, I already have Megalovania here downloaded. Where you get your sound files, I don't really care, as long as it's some place that's actually credible and not something that would give you malware. But for most audio downloads, you'll realize that this is an MP3 file. If we look here, yep, this is an MP3 file. The game won't recognize an MP3 file, nor will Trombone Charter. So we will instead use Audacity, ignore that, to convert this into an OGG file. So I'm going to, well, for now, this is actually quite loud. The game won't like that, and because you won't be able to hear your trombone. So we will change this into -6. That seems good. And I would also recommend adding at least 30 seconds of dead space, of silence, so that your song won't soft lock once you're actually done with it. We'll hit File, Export, Export as OGG. We will title this Song, because the game can only read song.ogg files. Save, OK. There it is. It's finished. We will minimize that, and then go back to our custom song folder. Look for Megalovania 2. You can also just try to save this into the file, but that's usually something you do manually. There's our TMB file, all alone. And now if we move the OGG, it now has a friend. Let me open this just in case to see if this is actually working. And once I've opened that, it technically reloaded the file. It has loaded a song.wav. Right now it says no song.wav loaded, but if we were simply load the chart, make sure this is the right area, Megalovania 2. Let's make sure just in case. I'm not taking consecutive chances here. Open. As you see, it didn't load correctly. However, it did load the WAV. Let me fix this. Go back to length, set it to 18. This time I'll save it. And to double check, just in case, because this program gets finicky at times. Megalovania 2, load. There we go. And if you're wondering if your song WAV has not generated, this is because you need to have FFmpeg installed in your computer. I will link a tutorial on how to install FFmpeg in the description. But for now, if you don't, you can simply go back to Audacity and export the file as WAV and place it in your custom chart folder over here. But for now, let's try charting Megalovania. And to begin with, let's begin by putting this all the way over there, just so we can hear this entire segment of Megalovania when we're finished. There's the first infamous 4 notes of Megalovania. Let's try listening to it. And as you can see, that was pretty slow. We weren't in timing with that because our timing snap is set to 4. What we're going to do now is set this to actually 8. You see a bunch of new lines appeared in between the lines. But we won't be able to work in this environment due to how close the notes are. What we're going to do now is change the zoom. There. Now we can actually work in constraints of the piano roll without making ourselves more of a pain in the ass. Perfect. I'll be back with you in a bit. Perfect. We have now made the first measure of Megalovania. But now we want to copy and paste this around 4 times just to capture the first part of Megalovania. To do that, we'll go to Editor Settings and to this area underneath the section. To move this, well, it's a bit of a pain to actually move this orange line, but I'll simply just drag and move it. There we go. And we'll want to position this right after this note. Next, we will have to reshape the section, the blue section here. So we'll do that, move that to the start, and move that over here. What you want to do is make sure the blue section encompasses the part of the chart that you actually want to copy and paste. Once we hit copy to and hit OK, the notes in here will be pasted right after this orange line. Hit OK, and we have our new section of Megalovania. We will move this over and copy it again. And one more time. There it is. Let's try taking a listen. Set this to 17. There we go. Preview. Perfect. Now, if you're wondering, yes, we can in fact play the game right now and see our chart. Let's do that. Open the game modded. Wait for the game. There we go. Play.
Choose your trombone.
And here it is. Well, if you don't have a song organizer, you may have to look for it alphabetically. But if you do, you can just search it up. Megalovania 2. 2015 OST Toby Fox. BPM, the title, that's the metadata, and our description. Heh. Now let's try playing it. I'll be back in a bit. Oh, good. Okay, it actually works now. I just had to save the file again. But as you can see, these notes are a little too close up, and earlier the chart moved a bit slow. Nobody likes to see these because it's a sign of lazy charting and a person who does not respect the end user. So what we're going to do now is head back to Charter and go to note spacing. Typically, note spacing affects how fast the chart scrolls in the game. So if we put it as 160, you see all the notes are now bunched up. But if we put it as 240, oh look, everything stretched out. There's no set rule, but if you are going to be like an asshole and set this to like 480, make this almost impossible to play. Let's take a look. Save that. Try. Yeah, that's not fun to play at all. So we will head back to Charter, and there is a consistent formula that works with any BPM for the most part. That formula, I'm going to go open calculator because I'm bad at math, is 100 divided by your BPM, which is 12 in this case, times 280. That gives us a number of 233. So we're going to change the note spacing to 233. Press enter, and that'll stretch things out. If you're going to be editing like this, I wouldn't recommend it because you're going to be placing a lot of notes on some charts. So we'll head back here to zoom, click this refresh, and it should resize everything to the default. With that, save the chart again to save the note spacing and retry. Right, I didn't realize that this is awful sounding, but as you can see, these notes are evenly spaced, they are actually playable, and your end user will be happy. But right now, let me fix this crap. One neat thing about Charter that I forgot to mention is that every time you save, the chart here gets updated live. It won't update this, but it will update the chart itself, meaning you can test things pretty quickly, allowing for a very versatile work set. But right now, I think this is actually pretty good. Next thing we'll want to do is actually add a background to our custom chart. Here. Let's see if I can find a decent background here in my not importance folder that I'll be using later. Here, this is a nice photo. Look at him. He's so happy. Anyway, your PNG file should be, well, 1920 to 1080, ideally. So we will not add. We will rename this to BG. As a result, you get this. Well, it looks weird, but this is how it's supposed to be: song, BG. But now, as I said earlier, if we play the song now, it should actually have the background. There's your background. But if you're more savvy and want to actually put MP4 movie in your background instead, what we can do is grab a MP4. Pretend I grabbed this out of thin air. Right now, if we open it, it's just going to be a movie that has audio, and if we put that in, it's not going to sound good, but let's try it. I do not recommend doing this. Do not do this. You'll get a mess of audio. Rename this to bg.mp4, and we'll retry. Sorry about that. But as you can see, it plays the backing track and the MP4 at the same time. You don't want that. So we'll take out VidCoder over here, drag the MP4 over, tick this off. This disables the audio track. Go to encoded, because this is also important. You will want to set your video file size to something that people won't mind actually downloading. 20 megabytes is a good measure. If it's something like 90, then I would recommend changing it, but 20 works fine. We're going to encode this. It's going to start encoding, and I'm sending this to my videos folder, so we will just have to wait. And it's complete. We have our background. So we'll get rid of this. Bye. And we'll drag this new one in. As you see, it doesn't play any audio, but you see him bouncing around. Drag that in. Fix that. There we go. Play the game again. It should only play Megalovania. There we go. That's how you make your track in custom Charter. But now, if you're wondering, how do I change the note color? Well, that's easy. These two note colors over here will open up a hexadecimal color matcher here. There's also HSV and RAW as well. But for now, let's go with simple black and simple white. Look at that. We have our note colors. Next, tick this off. That's important because it allows the game to actually use these colors in the game. We will save the chart, and we will let our new chart play with auto-tune because I'm lazy. Sorry if that was a bit loud, but there you have it. You have made a custom chart in Trombone Champ. Now, let's try publishing it. Here I am at the Trombone Champ modding Discord. This is where most charters will be publishing their charts, here in Chart Submissions. To do so, we can look at the pinned comments to find a template we can copy and use. Thank you, Gardy. Copy that, paste. The first line here will be the comment that appears when you publish your custom chart, right over here. The next line will be your file. It can either be a drive file, a Dropbox, or a media share. Not media share, media fire. But you can also just drop in the zip. We're going to try doing that. We'll head back to our custom song folder. Now, before you zip up the file, get rid of the song.wav. If you didn't know, WAV files are very huge, 57 megabytes. And for a user that probably has a lot of songs, 57 megabytes is probably not something you want to see in your custom charts folder. So we were going to delete this. There we go. Next, we will zip the file, add to archive, and there it is, Megalovania 2. Just drop that in there, hit enter, and then that should be it. Once that happens, Toothbender will take the file contents of your custom song. We can get rid of that. Toothbender will get the file contents of your song, analyze them, making sure it's the 3 files specifically, BG, song, and song, to ensure that is not malware and you're not sending something suspicious to everyone in the server. Once that's done, it'll make its own post on custom charts. It'll ping you. It'll add your description. This description from the chart itself, we put he here, that would appear down here. It'll also showcase the details of your song, how long it is, the track ref, the file size, and the files itself. It'll also have a hyperlink to download your chart. And if you made a YouTube video, it'll also, which you typically would add at the end of the message here, right there, it'll also add a preview. If you added a PNG instead of a MP4, it'll use that as a thumbnail, but otherwise, if it's a video, it'll also use the video thumbnail instead. You will also get a thread that people can post and tell you that your song is utter trash. But that's it. I hope you enjoyed this tutorial. I hope you find a better means instead of using Charter, because this thing sucks dick. But otherwise, I hope you enjoyed. Thank you.